Namaste, healing family. Thank you so much for joining me. The third video. Please, if you're liking what you're seeing, please subscribe, because I haven't got a fucking clue how to do it because I'm shit with technology. So I'm just going with a basic video, like saying. But again, we've started to get to a certain part that makes me feel uncomfortable, because it's now starting to resonate, everything that I went through, especially with mental health. And this is why I put hashtags mental health survivor, mental health warrior. And this is why I do Reiki, because trying to help so many people with mental health, with the depression. And when you actually sit down with my beautiful clients and explain certain things that they're going through, they kind of get it and the reason why. And especially, obviously, we do self-sabotage, and sadly I self-sabotage so many jobs, relationships, everything, friendships, the whole lot, because I didn't even know my fucking self. So how the hell was I going to give everyone else something that I didn't even have within me, if that makes sense? Now, this book, it makes me feel really, really uncomfortable, but I'm going to go through this because obviously I just try to explain some things for you, and it's what's known as a spiritual emergency. Now, the book says you've gone through a tremendous spiritual awakening, okay, so you've started to wake up and your life perspective has changed drastically, and you're no longer the same person you were a few years ago. And again, that's kind of, resonates with me, because when I started to wake up and started to realize what was going on, I realized, and again, I'm not saying this that you should do this, but I decided that I wanted to come off my medication because I felt it was the right time. I was on so many doses of different, citalopram, venlafaxine, the beta blockers, everything, because all I was feeling was being dumbed down, just completely so dumb that I couldn't feel a fucking goddamn thing. And that really hurt, because obviously, even though I tried to love, I couldn't love, if that makes sense. And things were just going completely terribly wrong for me, because it's kind of felt like I was being moved. And when you have that spiritual emergency and you're being moved, you kind of like, if you don't do it, they kind of like move you forward, if that makes sense. It's like you're going pushing, kicking and screaming, but they're pushing you in the right direction, if that makes sense. It says, while others are on the spiritual path and reveling in this wonderful time and the deep insights, you're feeling suffocated under the weight of an existential crisis. While others are busy reconnecting with their true purpose, you can barely function in a job or even get out of bed or even shower. And I think that's quite right, because sometimes when we're feeling depressed, we just don't want to do anything. You won't even brush your hair, you don't even want to get dressed properly, and you're just, so many different things again with depression. Again, obviously something that I went through. To be honest, I didn't even fucking like myself. So, it's kind of like, how could I like others? But again, when we do that, we start to push people away because we just don't want them near us. But sadly, a lot of people do that without getting any help, and sadly they've become in so much turmoil with themselves, and they feel so deep within themselves that sadly they just feel that there's no existence, and they take their own lives. And that's really, really fucking sad. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I know that my purpose is to help people with mental health, to try to jig them up, but I understand it because I've been there. So I'm not trying to be clever or fuck all like that. I just know. So that's why a lot of clients that come work with me, know the background. So it's kind of like they know that I'm not taking the piss, if that makes sense. But it's just always being there and supporting and just explaining. And this book explains it so well. Again, it's like, say, while others feel a deep sense of peace and alignment, you feel like you're on the verge of going crazy or being sucked into the black hole of depression or emptiness forever. But the one thing that we ask is, what did we do wrong? What did I do that was so wrong? And it's kind of like, and I just felt like I wasn't worthy. And do you know what? I just felt like I wasn't strong enough. But it's not even your fault to a certain degree. Again, with lessons, What you experience has nothing to do with your strength or capabilities, the book says. What you experience is something called a spiritual emergency or a crisis. And we'll see throughout the rest of this chapter. Now, the one thing is, it actually states before you go into this chapter, it might be worth pausing and checking in with yourself. And that's making sure that you're grounding, do you know what I mean? And knowing that you've actually prepared for this part of the journey. Again, there's so many other chapters that we're going to go through, but this fucking absolutely, really, it makes me feel uncomfortable just stood here doing this. I mean, I don't like talking to cameras at the best of time, but because obviously that, you know, I have that little bit of anxiety about it, but you have to push through, don't you? You always have to go forward. And again, it says if you want to, you can perfectly go through that. So it's fine. So I'm just gonna read a little bit for you. And it says, with that being said, let's start with a basic definition of a spiritual emergency. And the spiritual emergency is a term that refers to a severe crisis that an individual may experience after going through a spiritual awakening. So again, we've talked about all the nice things, you know, obviously we're recognizing, you know, they're making us, you know, start to evolve. But the one thing is that when we're doing this, what happens is with this spiritual emergency or crisis, it's kind of like the spiritual awakening has fucking flung you forward, and you know, and it's just like, oh my god, it just speeds up so much. It becomes, you start to become very destabilized. And again, this is why I try to help so many people with grounding, because when we are ungrounded, you know, we can feel completely right off balance. And again, the one thing is that it can be very terrifying to our body and our mind. So the phrase spiritual emergency itself is a term used by the Czech psychiatrist Stanislav and Christina Grof. And again, they obviously talked through this book again. I'll show you this book. It's called The Spiritual Awakening Process. You can get this off Amazon or anything like that, but I'm just happy to talk you through it. And we'll go through some, but obviously we won't be for that long. But spiritual emergencies can happen to anyone at any point in life. And there are those that are not particularly spiritual, can experience it just as often as those who are actively engaged on the spiritual path. The common uniting factor is usually that a person undergoes a shock, i.e. a form of illness, a death of a family, a major life event, i.e. divorce, that triggers the spiritual crisis. And the shock is, like I said, it's so destabilizing that it throws your whole psyche into chaos. So the dark night of the soul and the mystical psychosis can be differentiated in different ways. The dark night of the soul, again, the one thing you've got to remember that with this, obviously you can balance it, but a lot of the mystical psychosis where you start to work upwards, so you're working with your 4 chakras, and you're working with spirit, okay? So that's absolutely perfect. But there's the other part, the dark night of the soul will take you within, if that makes sense. You can find the balance where even though you are in that depressional state, you know, that severe depressional state, that you can start to hear the voices of spirit, of, you know, but again, you can find the balance, but again, it's how you deal with it, if that makes sense. So the dark night soul is defined as a period in one's life where it's complete absence of connection to the divine, i.e. to, you know, to the awakening. Intense I can't fucking say it, sorry. I'll fucking leave it. Suffering occurs with this state, and there is an abject sense of emptiness, both with oneself and within the world. Those undergoing a dark night of the soul may feel like the living dead, existing in the lifeless hull of a body that seems to be adrift in a black void of nothingness. Mystical psychosis, on the other hand, is a term that refers to the experience of undergoing hallucinations, experiencing paranoia, seeing visions, and otherwise losing touch with this reality. But again, obviously, you know, when we see these losing touch with this reality, with this realm, and obviously going into the spirit realm. So we're kind of like even awakening within all that. Again, many theories surround a mystical psychosis, with the most prominent being that mental illness such as schizophrenia are actually profound spiritual initiations. When the mystical psychosis is thwarted and not valued for its potential spiritual implications, it can evolve into a mental illness that is pathological. I can't fucking say this. What's the matter with me words today? Pathological. and reinforced by society. Obviously, historically we can see the mystical psychosis play out in such figures as Saint Teresa of Avila or even Van Gogh. It is possible to have a little bit of mystical psychosis paired with the dark night of the soul, and vice versa. It's even possible to have both equally. But most people tend to experience only one type of spiritual emergency. So again, so many different things that start to bring you to light in this spiritual awareness. Could be peak experiences, Kundalini awakening, near-death experiences, past life memories, psychological renewals, shamanic crisis, psychic opening, again when we start to work with spirit, again ringing in the ears, spiritual downloads, communication with spirit guides and channeling, close encounters with UFOs, people see them, and possession of obsessional states. So these varieties of spiritual emergencies don't necessarily stand alone. Often they mix and combine and confusing, but even in terrifying ways. So I'm just going to go on a little bit more about. Sorry, I'm just going to hold this back. But again, below you'll find several signs commonly experienced during spiritual awakenings. Okay, so you find it impossible to cope with everyday tasks. Again, shopping, showering, cooking, keeping up with the bills, because a lot of people just don't want to deal with any shit. You can't hold down a job to your intense sensitivity. It feels like your whole world is crumbling around you. You struggle to sleep properly and may experience night terrors. And again, that's most important, because the one thing is, obviously, with that, we're starting to wake up even earlier. You struggle to sleep properly and may experience them. Your inner and outer world starts to blur. So again, we just can't make no sense whatsoever. You're a roller coaster of emotions. Obviously, like I said, you can be very, very happy or very, very low, and people thinking, what's the matter with him or her? You may experience hallucinations, i.e. images, sounds, physical impressions, i.e. again, with the lights, the doors, someone even walking up the stairs you can hear during the night. Again, so many different things. Your grasp on the real and logical is weak, resulting in psychotic-like symptoms. You may believe that you are a reincarnation. That's perfectly fine. You may even experience vivid past life flashbacks, and strange sensations in your body, like vibrations, shivers. Again, the most important thing is, obviously, you feel like you're being sucked into a different dimension or a black hole, and you feel like you're going crazy. Well, the one thing is, how do spiritual emergencies happen? Honestly, there is no single one reason why. But the one thing is, I'm just going to briefly just go through these, and one of it is about your destiny. It's an accelerated spiritual awakening process. You're about to learn some profound lessons, work through a tremendous amount of karma, and transform into the most illuminated version of yourself possible at this lifetime. It also goes on about our conditioning as well, and the meaning of beliefs, ideas, and habits. It also goes into about the reason why they're pushing you forward as well. For what you're not realizing is that you could be a gifted shaman, a priestess, even a healer. And this is part of your spiritual awakening. Obviously, I'm a healer, so this is what I've been doing, and this is where they've been pushing us forward. It's just a process that connects with the forces of the unconscious mind and the spirit realm, which you have not yet learned to navigate. But also, you may be dealing with past karma as well in the belief systems. I believe that we deal with unresolved trauma from our past lives, obviously our past journeys that we were on. And that may take the shape of a spiritual emergency, because you may start receiving deja vu again in a past life, or what we may have experienced in that life and we've brought through to this life. And again, we're starting to make those same mistakes. So obviously they start to put you into a spiritual emergency, because you're not dealing with the way that it was in the past life. And again, you start to, purge your ancient patterns and develop a clean slate is what you're after. And again, even more anything that you're more sensitive. We all have various levels of sensitivity, and those who undergo a spiritual emergency may be more sensitive and empathic. Again, empaths are absolutely prone to the spiritual awakening and also the spiritual crisis. This may explain why a would-be spiritual awakening turns into a spiritual emergency, and it's simply too overwhelming for the already sensitive in life. Again, there is no way of proving this, but it's one theory that you might like to think. So I just wanted to take a few moments just to think about what we've spoke about today, and based on your psychological and emotional landscapes of which responds, which description triggers something inside of you, and whichever theory you strongly react to is likely to be the correct explanation for you. However, regardless of what explanation you resonate with, it's vital to stress here that it's crucial to give your spiritual emergency a purpose. He or she who has a why to live for can beat almost anyhow. So if you are experiencing a spiritual emergency or a mental illness, I'm just going to put the book down because I'm going to go now. You know, I'm here. You know, if you need a chat, you know, again, if you feel that I can help you with this healing, to bring you away from what you're suffering, or help, guide and assist, then that's what I'm here for. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm sorry it sounds very, very one tone, but love and light to you all. Stay safe, and thanks for joining me again on this video.